The film opens with a woman named Molly giving birth to a baby in western Philadelphia. A doctor comes and checks on the baby, only to discover something horrific. He notices that the baby's bones are broken, so he immediately calls for an ambulance. We now see a man named David Dunn, who comes and sits on a train right by a woman. He starts to flirt with the woman, but she mentions that she is married and gets uncomfortable. She gets up and goes away as David starts feeling bad about himself. While sitting alone, he senses that something bad is about to happen. Then, David's son is watching TV at home when he sees the news of the train crash. The train David was on crashed, and every passenger passed away. Surprisingly, David wakes up inside a hospital without even a scratch. Doctors are unable to figure out how this occurred. David walks out and is greeted by his wife, Audrey. At night, we see David going upstairs to sleep with his son while Audrey sleeps downstairs in their son's room. This indicates that their marriage is failing. David was coming back from giving a job interview in New York, and he told Audrey that he didn't get the job but would move there anyway. The next day, David goes to a church that holds a memorial service for the people who were on that train. While coming out of the church, David notices a letter on his windshield. The letter shows the name Limited Edition, which is the name of a store. The note asks him about how many days of his life he has been sick. This makes him wonder because he realizes he doesn't remember the last time he was sick. Later on, he goes to his job at a university stadium. He works as a security guard there and asks the boss's assistant about how many sick days he's taken. His boss later approaches David and gives him a raise because he has never taken a sick day in the 5 years he has worked as a security guard. This makes David even more paranoid about the letter. At night, David is unable to sleep, so he goes to Audrey and asks her if she knows about the last time David was sick. Even Audrey claims that she cannot remember the last time she saw David sick. The scene then cuts back to 1974, when the baby at the start of the movie is now a boy. His name is Elijah, but his classmates call him Mr. Glass and tease him at school because of how delicate he is. Apparently, he was born with a disease that makes him extremely weak, and his bones break easily. Because of this, he has no friends and is mostly alone all the time. His mother, Molly, gifts him a superhero comic to cheer him up. As an adult, he owns and operates a lucrative high-end comic book art gallery with a focus on original superhero illustrations. In his store, a man tries to buy one piece for his song, and Elijah refuses, claiming that this is art and not children's toys. This shows how serious he is about his business. David and Joseph arrive at his shop because it is called Limited Edition, and David wants to investigate what that letter was about. They sit down, and David hears Elijah's explanation. He mentions that all his life, he has been reading comic books because he had to spend a lot of time in a hospital bed. He talks about his disorder, which makes his bones frail. He thinks that comic books are actual stories, but they are just twisted and turned into cartoons for marketing. His theory is that if he's born with fragile bones and a high susceptibility to injury, then there must be someone on the other end who is the complete opposite, an invincible person meant to save everyone. Elijah has searched every calamity for a lone survivor who is unharmed, but he hasn't been successful. David Dunn is the one he's finally found after years of looking. However, David thinks all of this is stupid because he has been injured once when he was in college. He refuses to believe what Elijah is trying to say and leaves. Later on, David is on duty at the stadium when he gets informed that someone is attempting to enter covertly while asking for David. Elijah appears and begins to convey to David his thoughts about comic books. There are theories that ordinary men like him are some kind of superhero, that they possess powers they are unaware of, and so on. They walk together while talking when David bumps into a man and feels that he might be carrying some weapons. He tells the guards to start checking every person for weapons, and the man David was suspicious of leaves before they check him. When Elijah questions David about it, he explains that he pictured a certain type of firearm when he bumped into him. David returns to his business, but Elijah follows the man David bumped into. He sees the man going down some stairs and decides to follow him, but Elijah stumbles and breaks multiple bones, including his leg. Before he passes out, he gets a glimpse of the man's revolver, which is exactly as David had described. This means that Elijah is correct about David possessing some unique ability. Later, at home, David is using weights to work out in his basement. David is still not convinced by what Elijah says about him, but Joseph somewhat believes it. When David asks Joseph to take off some weight, he adds more weight without telling David. David lifts 250 pounds, which is a record for him. David is shocked at this and keeps telling Joseph to put on more weight, eventually reaching a maximum of 350 pounds. Elijah is in bad condition, with many of his bones broken, and Audrey, David's wife, is his nurse. Elijah inquires about David, and she tells him that David was a star football player, but he got into a car accident. David never returned to playing football after an accident. That was the reason she and David got married. Meanwhile, David meets a school teacher who informs him that his son has been injured. The school nurse recalls that David attended this same school. She remembers how, throughout his time as a student there, David was teased close to a pool by some bullies. They drowned him in the pool after, but he managed to survive and was discovered at the bottom of the pool. At night, David and Audrey are talking when Joseph takes David's gun and threatens to shoot him. He says that he knows David is invincible, and he will prove it. But David manages to convince him that he is not a superhero, and that he should put the gun down. Enraged by this, David goes to see Elijah the next day. He explains the pool incident and says that it is indeed possible for him to get hurt. Elijah manages to make the point that all superheroes have a weakness, and David's weakness is water. The following evening, David breaks into a train station and looks at some of the damaged trains. He begins to remember that he wasn't wounded at all in his own vehicle wreck from years prior. He remembers that he had to save Audrey from the burning car by using his superhuman power. He then calls Elijah and informs him that he is correct. David has never experienced any illness or injury in his life. Elijah assures him that David's employment in security is not by accident. He must go to the people and defend them there. David heads to Penn Station on a rainy day while donning a hooded rain poncho. There are hundreds of people walking by him. Every time someone crosses paths with David and touches him, he sees a vision of them committing a crime. David has a terrifying vision of multiple people who are thieves and killers. In one vision, he sees a maintenance worker hurting the homeowners of the house he is working in. He starts to follow him to see if he actually does it. He finds the house and breaks inside, only to find most of the family tied up. He tries to find the worker, but David is pushed out the window by him. David settles on the covered backyard pool. David becomes entangled in the cover underwater as it suddenly begins to collapse under his weight. Once more, he is drowning, but the two sisters he untied come there with a pole and save his life by helping him out of the pool. David returns upstairs, engages in combat with the man, and ultimately breaks his neck to end his life. Returning home, David is shown in the following scene putting up his poncho and bringing his sleeping wife upstairs to their bed. In the morning, when Joseph is eating breakfast, David gives him the newspaper and puts his finger to his lips to quiet him. According to the headline, 2 girls were saved by an unidentified hero. The image depicts what the girls observed, as seen by the artist. It depicts a figure wearing a cape and hood, like a superhero. David later visits Elijah's gallery, where he is hosting a large party in honor of a special exhibition. David meets Molly, who starts to talk about comic book villains. She explains how Elijah always thought there were 2 types of villains, those that are evil from the start, and those that become friends with the hero first. David then goes to Elijah's back office to talk about the fact that he saved some people. Since his fall, Elijah has been confined to a wheelchair. They shake hands, and he tells David how pleased he is with him. David suddenly sees visions of Elijah lighting a building on fire, causing a jet to crash, and lastly, Elijah stepping out of the driver compartment of David's destroyed train. David is appalled by this and by what he finds when he peers around Elijah's office. He finds newspapers and articles about hundreds of global catastrophes. All of these events have been planned by Elijah, who is their mastermind and has done all of this just for his own personal gain, and to find someone like David. Every wicked villain needs a good opponent, just like in comic books, and Elijah has at last found his. Elijah, who is now in a wheelchair, announces that he is called Mr. Glass, and David retreats in terror and walks away from him. A message then states that Elijah has been placed in an institution for the criminally insane after David told the authorities about what he had done. Here, this movie ends.
Thank you for being a part of Instant Movie Recaps. If these tales of mystery and intrigue sent shivers down your spine, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to Instant Movie Recap for more bone-chilling narratives. Stay tuned, and until next time, stay captivated.